Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. I've put together a bit of a vlog for you all today. It's sort of took place over a couple of days last week because we are still in lockdown in Melbourne. I've lost track of what week this is, week 6 maybe 7, so I'm still not able to go to my studio, so there's not really a lot to share at the moment. I'm doing as much as I can at home, but it's it's not very exciting. The weather though has actually been beautiful the last few days. The sun is shining. It's coming into springtime now in Melbourne, and so the days have been beautiful and warm, sort of a nice 22 23 degrees Celsius, so not too hot but nice enough to sit in the sun. And so I have been taking advantage of that and spending quite a bit of time outside on my veranda. Most of Tuesday morning was sort of spent putting together a new Skillshare class that I have been working on, and I decided that I was going to repurpose my little pochade box. If you remember, there was a video I did a few weeks ago showing you this little pochade box that I made, and I was using it with oil paint, but to be honest, I don't use oil paint that much. So I decided, and also I should mention, I have got another pochade box that's bigger than this that has oil paint in it anyway. I tend to use that one a bit more. So this one I decided to scrape out the old oil paints and just fill it up with some sketching materials instead. So you can see that little block of paper, which was from the sketch box, which again I have a video for. That fits perfectly into this little pochade box. So that's watercolour paper. So I popped that in there. And I decided to fill it up with some things. So this is actually a little tiny cute watercolour palette. It's just got some random watercolour pans in it. I don't actually even remember where most of them came from. It's just a basic primary palette. I decided to pop a bit of a pencil sharpener in there for obvious reasons. And these are some travel brushes that I picked up from Rosemary & Co. They're really good brushes that actually convert into like a full-size brush, and you can then fold it away so the bristles don't get damaged. I actually bought a couple of them, so I decided to put 2 of them into this little pochade box. So I've got like a round one and this little flat brush, because a bit of variety. So I thought I'd put those in there as well to use with this little watercolor palette. They're beautiful quality brushes too, and the little cases are metal as well, so they feel quite fancy. I also put in one of my little calligraphy brushes that I recently purchased, and they fit perfectly into this little pencil box. And this here is just a standard calligraphy fountain pen. It's just got little ink capsules in it. The ink isn't like a waterproof ink, so if you mix it with water it does run, but I really like the effect that it gives. And I like sketching with this sometimes, so I've popped that into there as well. This is another brush that I decided to put in. This is actually a Sable Brush, and it was actually originally my grandfather's who this pochade box came from. So I thought I'd pop that in as well. It's a nice brush that for doing just washes and sort of like a mop brush, I guess you'd call it. And I then put in, what was this? Oh, that's right. This is like a little Zig Brush Pen. This actually came in a previous sketch box, and it's just a white opaque ink that is in this pen form, and you sort of twist the end of it and it pushes the ink down. And this is really good for using for like adding touches of white and details to watercolor sketches and pen and ink sketches, because I'm not particularly good at retaining the white paper. I almost always have to put white back on again, so that's really good for that. I also decided to add in a few of these brush markers. There are a few different varieties. Again, some of these came from sketch boxes and some I bought. I don't remember which is which, but I think actually most of these came from sketch boxes, come to think of it. The last one even, I think, and this one, I don't remember the brands of them. You can see them written there. But I just thought I'd throw a few of these in as well. I don't like sketching just with one medium. I tend to like more mixed media sketching. So, and I'm really liking these sort of watercolor brushes and things, and I'm using them a lot. So that was just a standard grey lead pencil. And then I was left with a whole bunch of colour pencils and things that I kind of wanted to pick and choose which ones to add in. So I didn't want to add them all in, obviously, because the box would be way too chockers. So I kind of went through and made some decisions about which ones to keep. I think I tried to keep a fairly sort of primary type of palette. So I think I picked out a couple of blues, a couple of browny reds, and yeah, kind of kept it as simple as I could. I didn't want to go too crazy, but then there's nothing worse than, not having the colours that you need. But I tried to just include, a few warm colours, a few cool colours, and that was it. I didn't want this box to be so overcrowded that I couldn't close it. So I think, yeah, there you go. That's the selection of brushes, pencils, I should say, that I ended up choosing to put into this little box. And so I'm hoping that, I'll take these out with me a bit more often when I can go out, if it's not just oil paint, because, oil paint, it is a bit of a hassle to use, to be honest. And because the paper that's in here is quite small, like I'm never really going to do anything, too detailed. And so I thought maybe it was just a bit better for sketching. So yeah, this is my little pochade box that I put back together again with all these bits and pieces. And because it was such a beautiful day, I decided that I was going to go and sit back out on the veranda and just do some sketching. Some very chill, no pressure, just for the fun of it sketching. I've got these little tea roses that I am planning on replanting. They're just sitting in a pot at the moment on my veranda. I am going to put them into a bigger pot and hopefully they will grow a bit bigger. But I decided to just spend some time sitting and sketching from life because, why not? I don't really sketch from life very often, and it is something that I feel like I should be doing a lot more often, but I don't know, I just don't. So I decided on this particular day I was going to spend some time sketching these flowers and some things on my veranda. And it was such a beautiful sunny day. I mean, I was soaking up some vitamin D and I really needed it. And yeah, so this is, I really love these brush pens. As I was saying earlier, I think they're really versatile because, you can block in wide areas of colour really quickly, and because most of them are sort of water soluble, they work really well with the actual watercolour paints, so you can get like really loose and expressive kind of marks and sketches with them. And I really wasn't being too precise with any of this. I just wanted it to be super, super loose. I've been feeling lately that I've been quite tight in my paintings. I think it's because I've sort of been exploring a different subject matter than what I usually do. I've been working with a lot of still life subject matters at the moment. And I find that when I do switch over to a new subject, I start to get really tight with it because I'm not comfortable with it yet. And so especially if I'm working from like photo references and things, I do start to feel really sort of restricted. And so I kind of wanted to just loosen up and do something that wasn't precise and it wasn't perfect. And so I decided to use quite a few of these mixed media elements into this little sketch. So you can see I'm using... Sorry, my hand is a really terrible angle. My hand is blocking what I'm doing, but I am using the watercolour palette to just block in some watercolour. And yeah, I didn't really have anywhere to rest the camera properly. But anyway, this was the first sketch that I did. You can see it is super loose and I really like that sort of sketchy look to it. It's kind of a bit like, an urban sketching type of situation. But I did this one and then I decided that I would do one of my little fiddle leaf fig and my chair on my veranda. And so that's how this one turned out. I was actually a lot happier with this one than the first one. This one was mostly watercolour and markers. But anyway, I will come to think of it, my fiddle leaf fig, any plant people out there, why is it turning brown? It was doing so well. I've had this for like over 18 months now and it was growing beautifully. It started really tiny and it's gotten to this big, and then all of a sudden in the last couple of months it's not cooperating anymore and it's starting to go brown. And yeah, so if you know how to fix that, leave a comment and let me know. So anyway, fast forward to Wednesday. Again, because spring is happening in Melbourne at the moment, we are getting a lot of little birds and things fluffing around near our house. This is actually a fairy wren. This is the female fairy wren. The males have beautiful blue colours all over them. And this is Luna watching the fairy wren. our cats are both 100% indoor cats. We do have a cat run, like a little catio outside that they can access, but they can't actually get out into the wild. So this is as close as she's going to get to any birds for their sake. And she loves watching them. She's obsessed. They both are obsessed. And the birds don't really seem to be bothered by them. They just ignore the cats. I think they've learnt that the cats can't get to them, so they'll just sit on the branches and almost tease them. And so they just sit there and stare at them, and it keeps them very entertained. So if you've been following my Instagram page, you'll know that I did recently put together a Skillshare video painting this still life, and I have been doing a lot of still life paintings recently just because, I go off on tangents, and I often get people, when I go off on these little tangents of different subject matters, I do get a lot of comments from people about, oh, I love your new style, I love your new direction, and I don't know, I find that I'm not upset by those comments, but I do find them a little odd because subject matter to me, whether I'm painting, landscapes, still lifes, birds, flowers, whatever, to me, the changing the subject doesn't necessarily mean that I'm changing my style. Subject and style don't necessarily matter. I always paint in the same style. It doesn't matter what the subject is, it's always the same style. And so I do switch around subjects quite often, and I have recently switched over to still lifes, even though I have in the past mostly paint landscapes. I'm sorry, I'm starting to ramble a little bit. What I'm saying is that at the moment I am studying still life paintings. Yeah, so on this particular day, I decided that, still on that tangent of, loosening up a little bit, I decided to do some acrylic ink sketches and drawings and paintings on paper. So you can see here, this is the ink and paper I was using, but I wanted to loosen up a bit because, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm finding that because I'm fairly new to this still life kind of subject matter, I'm very tight and I don't feel like it's me yet, and I haven't found a way to paint this subject matter in the way that I want to paint it yet. Because, yeah, I do this with all of the subjects that I choose. Like I said, I do change subject matters quite often, but I always want to try and represent those subjects in my own way and in a way that feels like it's me. And so usually when I start with a different subject matter, I will start quite tight while I'm working out how to actually do it. And then I will slowly push myself to be looser and looser and looser with it. And so this is the process that I sort of take with most of my subject matters. And this exercise here that I'm doing is just a way that I like to loosen up my work. And you'll notice that I haven't actually sketched out this composition at all before I've started. So I am working loosely from like a reference that I had on my phone, but I'm not sketching it out before I start painting. I just wanted to get colour down and start layering colour and paint. And by doing it this way, I find that when I do sketch things, I tend to want to stick to that sketch. And so by doing it this way, it's just a way to kind of loosen that up a little bit. And yeah, I always find that when I work from reference photos, which I have been quite a lot with these still life paintings, I automatically get quite tight because I focus a lot on the reference photo and trying to make the painting match the photo. And that's not really what I'm wanting to do, but I just find myself doing that. So yeah, so this is a way to kind of loosen up from, trying not to make everything perfect. So you can see that I've just blocked in, the shapes and colours of where things are, and really, really free and loose trying to block in the colours. So I'm not trying to make it perfect. And yeah, so I actually had a lot of fun with these, and I really love using, as I mentioned, this was acrylic ink. And acrylic ink, honestly, it's very similar to watercolour, but I find that the colours are a lot more intense with the acrylic ink because like, you know, straight out of the jar, they're super intense. You can sort of water them down and make them less intense, but I really like that intense colour. And I was only using, I think there was maybe 4 colours in the end I ended up using. So again, it's a limited palette. You can mix ink colours together. So even if you have only one blue, red and yellow, you can mix them to make other colours. So that's what I've done here. And yeah, I just layer it up. And so I started super loose, just roughing in these shapes and trying to get, you know, a bit of the shadows put down, but, you know, I didn't want it to be too precise. As soon as I started contemplating putting in detail, I stopped myself and just put in super basic shapes. And once the first layer dried, I then came in with some, you know, different values of the ink just to add some dark areas and light areas. But yeah, it's really fun. So if you haven't used ink before, I highly recommend using it. And yeah, anyway, I'll just let you watch me do this for a little while. These are all going to be ink on watercolor paintings. So I'll pop some music on and you can relax and watch that for a little while. In this one, I decided to bring in some oil pastel just to add a little bit more texture to the ink. Yeah, I really like the sort of scribbliness effect that you get when you add the oil pastel on top of the ink. And because the white isn't exactly a super opaque white with the ink, the oil pastel adds a bit more of a white highlight to it, so it looks a little bit more bright, if that makes sense. I really liked this one. I think this one was really super loose, and I loved the sketchy sort of look that it had. Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more as well about the fact that I do change subject matters a lot. I do mostly paint landscapes, but I have over the years explored portraits, flowers, obviously abstract stuff, and I do jump around a fair bit, and I think that that's perfectly fine. I think that you don't have to stick to one thing all the time. And as I said earlier, even though I do change around subject matters, the style and the way that I approach every single subject is exactly the same, and the message that I'm trying to portray, regardless of the subject, is the same. So that's the idea of subject and style. That's what I mean, that the subject matter doesn't dictate your style. They're two totally different things. So you can have a style and a totally different subject matter every single time. And it's quite common for artists to switch around subject matters. It's very hard to just continually paint the one thing over and over and over and over forever for the rest of your life. It just doesn't happen. So it's quite common to switch around different subject matters. So, if you're an early stage artist and you're worried that you seem quite, you don't seem to be able to stick to one thing for very long, don't worry about it. That's perfectly normal, and it happens. So I've gone through lots of different stages in my sort of art career over the last few years, changing around different subject matters and exploring different things. And I find that that's what keeps it interesting. That's what keeps me motivated and wanting to continue to create art, is exploring different things. And, naturally I'm sort of stuck inside at home at the minute. So the idea of creating little still life motifs and setups, it's just practical at the moment because I can't actually go out anywhere to film or to photograph, landscapes and stuff. So that's why I've kind of moved more towards still life. And, once this has run its course, I will probably go back to landscapes, abstracts, or something else. So, it's just a bit of, a way to keep myself interested. And yeah, that's I don't really have anything else to say on that. I just wanted to point out the fact that I do get a lot of comments on Instagram, specifically from people where they say that, oh, no, I love the new style that you're using. And it's like, oh, well, I'm not really changing my style. I'm not painting a landscape at the moment. So yeah, anyway, this was that showing what that last one looks like. So moving on to Thursday, I decided that I was going to, here's some more fairy wrens. There, see, that little blue one, that's the male. Anyway, I decided I was going to go back and do some work in my sketchbook. And I'm still, again, even on this day, I was pushing myself to kind of loosen up the way that I'm approaching still life a bit more. So this is the sketchbook that I have been working in. And you can see that most of them are quite loose and painterly. But the two paintings that I've done on canvas of still lifes, as soon as I switch to canvas, suddenly I'm not as loose as I am on the paper. I think it's something to do with the surface. This paper is quite smooth and the canvas has a bit of texture to it, so I can't quite get my brush strokes in the same way on the canvas as I do on the paper. So I just decided to go back to the sketchbook again. And these are just, what I've been doing in here so far. And I decided to go back into the sketchbook and try and paint a still life subject in a little bit more of a looser manner with paint rather than ink. So using what I had done the day previous, that sort of, blocking in the shapes and you're not really doing too much sketching, I kind of started this in the same way. I very loosely sketched in where things were going to go, but I didn't really worry too much about that. And instead I focused more on the painting side of things. And I really want to get a style that's a lot more painterly. Most of my paintings are really, there's a lot of brushstroke heavy. There's a lot of textured brushstrokes. Not thick paint. I don't paint in a thick textured way, but I do paint in a way that is really visually textured, if that makes sense. So I might actually I'll pop some pictures up of my other work. In case you're not familiar with my work, I will pop some pictures up of my other work. Okay, so here's just a few examples of some of the other paintings that I have done in the past. And this is what I mean by painterly. So you can see there's a lot of visual brush strokes. It's all, it's all the colours blocking and everything's really painterly. And that's what I'm trying to get to happen with these still life paintings. I want to have that thick painterly texture to them. And sometimes it takes a little while when I do change subject matters, it takes a little while to work out how to do that in relation to a new subject, because you have to think about light and shade and value and how things are portrayed. And so I'm trying in this sketchbook here to just work out visually how I want to do that. And so I am spending a bit of time just painting, super fast and loose with no pressure. And that's why working in these kinds of sketchbooks are great, to try and work out how I'm going to be doing this subject. So these were just some geraniums that are on my porch at the moment. So I took a photo of them and decided to paint them. And this is acrylic on this sketchbook. And yeah, so I think I'm getting there. And I'm really happy with what I'm doing now. And so I have bought some small canvases because I can't work on large canvases at the moment because I'm limited with space. And so I have got some smaller canvases that I've purchased that I'm going to start painting on over the next few days. But I want to make sure that I have that sort of visual understanding of what I want to, or how I want to approach this still life subject matter before I start on those. So yeah, I was actually really happy with how this painting came out. And I often have that problem where I have that looseness and that I don't care attitude when I'm painting in sketchbooks. And then it's like a mental thing, whereas as soon as I switch over to a canvas, which, in my mind is a proper painting, I lose that I don't care what happens feeling. And I know that this is a really common thing that happens with a lot of artists, that, it's a mindset. As soon as you have a canvas and you think, okay, this is going to be a finished painting, suddenly you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and that comes out in the painting as, being stiff and a little bit too much of a perfectionist. And I see it quite often when I am teaching workshops, because, you've paid money to go to this workshop and you feel a lot of pressure to make a perfect painting. And so I know that happens quite often. And even though I'm aware of it, it still happens. So I'm hoping that the more I do in this sketchbook, in this kind of loose, I don't care what happens way, once I switch over to these canvases, hopefully my mindset will be in the same place. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with these. And this was, really pretty. And I really love the colours as well. And you're going to see that in a minute, the colour actually changes because my camera battery ran out and I had to switch over to my phone. And so, yeah, the colour changes. So this is what the colours look like. This is like a pretty good representation of what they actually look like in real life. And they're really rich and really beautiful and vibrant. And then when I switch over to my phone camera in a minute, you'll see suddenly it will go really washed out and dull. So just ignore that. It actually looks a lot more like this in real life. But yeah, anyway, so this is what I've been doing. So this is how I've been spending my days at home painting. I'm trying to get as much work done as I can, but it is hard because I don't have the space at home as what I have at my studio. So, and I also don't have the same sort of working routine at home as I do in my studio. So it is a bit of a challenge. But yeah, I'm doing my best. So anyway, yeah, so you can see here, I've switched over to my phone now because my other camera died. So yeah, it looks like really washed out and pale now, but yeah, this is why I don't film with my phone too much, because it does wash out the colour. And yeah, that just frustrates me. Anyway, so yeah, this was, I feel like I'm doing a lot of rambling in this vlog, and I'm sorry if you're sick of hearing my voice. And my dog's now barking. Anyway, yeah, so this is what I've been doing. And yeah, I hope you found that interesting and you liked watching me paint, because, I've been watching a lot of YouTubers lately because I'm enjoying watching other people create and paint as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is the other side of the page. I did actually do this as well. This was another painting of my veranda and the same sort of geranium plants that are there. And yeah, so anyway, thank you for joining me for this little vlog, and I hope that you are all well. And if you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel, because what that's going to make sure that my channel pops up for other people that might be interested to find me and to watch it. So yeah, so I hope you have a lovely week, and I will be back for my next video soon.